professor in I'm a professor in Politecnico di Torino in Italy, and today I will give you a short seminar about polymers and plastics, the route for sustainability. Well, I will start with some shocking facts, actually, about plastics that everybody knows. We have more than 5 trillion pieces of plastics that are floating in our oceans. This is a nightmare. Worldwide, 73% of which are littered by plastic. More than 40% of plastic is used just once, then disposed. Around the world, there are 1 million plastic beverage bottles that are sold every minute. So it's a large amount of plastic. And some of them, they can stay forever for many hundred years in the environment. 700 species of marine animals have been reported so far to have eaten or become entangled in plastics. And by 2050, which is not so far away, every silver species on the planet will be eating plastics, and we don't know the consequences about that. So this is what we see around. This is something, those are pictures taken from the internet, which are really devastating, especially for somebody working in the field of polymers. But actually, I would say that plastic is not bad. It's the way how humans handle plastic, which is not correct, and we can foresee for sustainability of plastics and polymers in general. There are different solutions. One, of course, is reducing single use of plastic and recycle. This will decrease the litter of plastics. And then, of course, which is a consequence, is going in the direction of the circular economy. I will shortly go through these two strategies. But we can use biodegradable polymers or bio-based polymers as sustainable resources. Well, reducing single use of plastics, of course, is a good alternative because we can reduce the number of waste, of plastic waste, and reducing the accumulation in landfill and oceans as a consequence. This will also reduce the CO2 emission in the atmosphere, reduce the energy consumption, and of course, as I say, the plastic pollutants in the environment. Here it's reported this is reported the CO2 production starting from the crude oil up to the end life in incineration of the plastic. And you see that if we could cut this part of the refinery part and also the end life, so in the idea of recycle in the circular economy, we can strongly reduce the CO2 emission due to the production and degradation of plastic. So the idea is doing polymer recycling, and there are different ways to polymer recycling. What you do not recycle, you go in the incineration, which produces energy, is not a good way because the amount of energy that is produced by incineration is much lower than the amount of energy that you need to produce that plastic. But at least if you cannot really recycle anyhow, at least you can produce a little bit amount of energy. What is not recovered goes to the landfill, and this will cause problems of pollutants of plastics in the land, in the water, in the oceans, and so on. So the idea is that we can go in the direction of recycling, mechanical recycling, which is the most used, or chemical recycling. But at the moment, we have about 30-35% of plastic recycling. And besides, we can only recycle thermoplastics. It's not possible to recycle thermosets. So the other strategy is to go in the direction of the circular economy so that we can decrease, eliminate waste and pollution, recovering the waste and getting some materials from the waste and regenerate some new materials recovering from the waste. So in the circular economy, there is a transition from the typical way of producing materials, to the idea of reuse, share, repair, remanufacturing, recycling. And this will strongly decrease creation of waste, pollution, and carbon emission, as I already explained. So the idea is to go in the direction of a circular economy, which is a good alternative, and to decrease the plastic pollutants. The third option, which is very interesting, is go in the direction of biodegradable polymers, so that you can degrade polymers and avoiding to keep them in the environment. Well, this is more complicated than expected. Well, first of all, we can have biodegradable materials which are coming from renewable resources, which is another option. It's the fourth way, is using bio-based resources instead than fossil resources, which is also a good opportunity to decrease the plastic pollutants. Well, biodegradable materials can be based on renewable resources, but biodegradable materials, polymeric materials, can be based also on petrochemical resources. So some plastics actually now coming from the fossils can be biodegradable. Then there are not all the bio-based materials are degradable, so it's not enough that a polymer comes from bio-based in order to be considered degradable. And then, of course, there are most of the petrochemical resources which are not degradable. So it's not enough to say we want to produce a biodegradable polymers, because we have to select properly which materials are biodegradable, and they could either come from a bio-based resources or from a petroleum resources, from a fossil resources. A different way of inducing biodegradation. It can be an enzymatic degradation. It can be an hydrolysis. Of course, the different selection depends on the structure of the polymer, or it can be the combination of them. What is important is that the degradation process will give rise to the starting materials, so that sometimes we can even reuse the starting materials deriving by the degradation to produce new polymeric materials, to produce new plastics. When we talk about biodegradation and biodegradation polymers, as I said, we have to pay attention to decide and to classify the polymers which are bio-based and biodegradables, but also the polymers which are not bio-based but still are biodegradables. Actually, from bio-based materials, there are a lot of polymers which are accessible. So we have a large amount of possibilities from cellulose derivatives, which goes again in the direction of the circular economy. If I have agro-food waste, I can recover this waste instead of burning or don't know what to do with this waste. I recover part of the components of the waste, and I can get new materials from this waste. There is collagen, there is gelatin, there is chitin and chitosan, there is dextran, alginate. So there is a large availability of bio-based polymers. So we can think to start to develop new materials from bio-based resources as an alternative to the polymeric materials from fossil-based resources, so that we start from sustainable resources. And be careful, when we think about it, we have to think that we should exploit resources which are not edible in order to avoid to compete with the food chain industry. So there are a lot of resources, of bio-based resources coming from nature, which are renewable resources, which are not edible, from which we can extract precursor to prepare new polymers, which are sustainable in terms of processing and also biodegradable. And so we can close the complete circle in the idea of recovering, and so in the idea of the circular economy. Which are the sources of biopolymers, natural resources? Well, there can be natural biopolymers from, there are a lot of lipids, there are a lot of oils, waxes, and triglycerides. There are many oils coming from plants which can be easily functionalized and exploited to get new materials. There is the large area of the polysaccharides. Starch, chitin, cellulose, alginate are all polysaccharides which can be recovered, as I said before, from the agro-food waste. There are proteins which can be also achieved by nature. Some biopolymers are synthetics, so coming from petroleum, and they still have a biopolymer derivatives, and some are coming from macrobial resources, which means that there are some plants, macrobiological plants, where materials produce as they have sources of food, which are usually, again, sugars or whatever, and they produce polymers as digestions of this food. Some of these biopolymers are already being used. We know some of them that are commercially available, coming from starch, mainly from starch. And they have a commercial name like Plantic, Solanil, Bioplast, and we're already familiar with them because some of those polymers have already substituted our utensils, which are used once, like forks, knife, glasses, or whatever, which before were made of plastics. Now they're made with these bioplastics. There are others which have been used, for example, as packaging, so coming again from PLA, for example, so polylactic acids, which is a biopolymers. And again, those materials which are commercially available are substituting some of the packaging which were before produced with fossil-based plastics. And there is a family which are called as polydroxyalkanoate, which are derived by bacteria and are accumulated into microbial cells. And those polymers have interesting applications. They are polyester, so all what is PET, polyethylene terephthalate, can be substituted by polydroxyalkanoate. How do they are produced inside of the microorganisms? Then the cells of these microorganisms are separated, centrifugated, filtrated, and is a recovering directly of the polymer. So the polymer is produced by microorganisms themselves. And they have properties which are quite comparable in terms of thermal and mechanical properties with the classical commodities, polymeric commodities, such as polypropylene or polyethylene. So those class of bio-based materials are strong competitors of the fossil-based polymeric materials, and it's already something that it's new. And so there are different already commercially available in the US, in Germany, like Miral Metabolics, Biomer, which comes from as a products of fermentation of starch, rape, or plant residues. Again, so I recover the plant residue, I use those microorganisms to ferment them, and as a product, I will get the bio-based polymers. So it's a very interesting sources of alternative of polymers with respect to fossil-based polymers. In my case, what I'm doing since many years is trying to find the bio-based precursor to be used in technology that I'm using, which is called as UV curing. UV curing technique is a polymerization technique induced by UV light, which has some advantages already, also from an environmental point of view. It's a very fast reaction, so there is energy, time, and cost saving. The polymerization is occurring without the using of any organic solvents, so there is an important abatement of volatile organic compounds. And it can be used for many different applications, as I will show you later on. if we start, the reaction is starting from a precursor, a monomer, which is reacted to form the polymer, the cross-linked polymers in the case of the UV curing. Usually the monomer is starting from fossil derivatives, so it comes from petroleum. If we start from bio-based monomers, we have an important sustainability, because we have the sustainability of the material and the sustainability of the process. So starting from bio-based monomers, we reduce the dependence of non-renewable fossil-based resources. We reduce the carbon footprint, as I mentioned before, and we can use agricultural food industry side stream as a sources for the polymeric precursors. It was a work done by my PhD student, Lorenzo Pezzana, and it was really the idea of starting from bio-based precursor, inducing some functionalization, using this functionalized precursor to get UV-cured thermoset and make the characterization of the UV-cured thermostats. And we can start from many different resources, from plants and getting lignin, cellulose, hemicellulose, which can be further functionalized and exploited in UV curing. We can start from fruits and getting a lot of different terpenes, which have interesting chemical structures. We can start from oils, soybean oil, linseed oil, castor oil, sunflower oil. Some of those oils are not edible, so it's perfect to be used to produce new materials. And we can start from other waste, like fish or other waste, and recovering starch, ketosane, or alginate, which can be properly functionalized and cross-linked to get the bio-based polymeric network. So, for example, isosorbide is a derivative of cellulose. Furfuryl dimethanol also is a derivative of cellulose. Furfuryl alcohol is a derivative of cellulose. So we can recover from cellulose those materials, inducing the functionalization. It's an easy reaction which can be performed in a green way, so in environmental sustainability also the reaction. We induce the functionalization because we need functional groups that need to be exploited in the subsequent curing process. And we can use those functional materials to get cross-linked materials. And we have used also in 3D printing, which is a very well-known technique to build 3D complex objects. And when this 3D printing technology is used, the light, we need photocurable monomers, so monomers containing functional groups which are reactive towards the irradiation process. And as you can see, we could 3D printed objects, different objects, complex objects, which are completely bio-based because we started from bio-based precursors. In the case of the isosorbide, again, derived from cellulose, we induce, again, another easy functionalization reaction. So at the end, we have, again, epoxy groups in the chemical structures. Those molecules are characterized, by an MR analysis so that we are sure about the structures. These are liquids monomer, which are polymerized under UV light. We can add macadamia nut shells. Again, if we are in a specific part of the earth, we have macadamia and we have a lot of macadamia nut shell as waste material, we can grind the macadamia nut shell, reducing it as a powder and dispersing into the photocurable formulations. And the macadamia nut shell, which has a strong mechanical performance, will act as reinforcement in the cross-linked materials. And this will enhance the mechanical performance of the material. So we prepare materials with 10, 20, and 30% of macadamia nut shell as a reinforcing agent. So we have a complete bio-based composites. The precursor is bio-based. The filler, which is dispersed into the precursor, is a bio-based. And so we have a complete bio-based composite. We did the same with soybean oil. Soybean oil can be functionalized, and this was functionalized with methacrylate groups. And 3D printing process were performed. In this case, we disperse into the soybean oil bioactive gases, which are bioglases synthesized on purpose. So this is not bio-based, but that's an important achievement in facilitating the growing of the cells, so that the 3D printed structures, which are here reported, containing bioglases, will facilitate the growing of the cells, so those structures can act as a scaffold. So this is another application of those bio-based cross-linked polymers. The precursor was bio-based, soybean oil, so extracting oil from soya, functionalized, dispersed bioglases, 3D printed, getting these complex 3D structures, and getting a scaffold to allow cells to grow. So those scaffolds have mechanical properties comparable to the properties of the bones, and so they can replace bones and allow the cells to grow on it. This brings me to my conclusion. I hope I could give you a general overview and a general idea on how we can exploit the use of molecules coming from nature, molecules extracted from the waste, agroalimentary or food waste. And from there, we can, with easy functionalization reaction, and then with an environmental friendly technique such as UV curing, achieve a complete sustainable polymeric material, so that we can avoid to see in the future those terrible images that I showed you at the very beginning of my presentation. So now I'm open to discussion. If you have any questions, I will be very happy to discuss with you.
Yeah, thank you, Marco. This was a very interesting and very detailed presentation. If you have questions, you can either ask them orally or write them in the chat. Anyone is welcome. Okay, are there any questions by any chance? Okay, Zuhara, you have a question.
Yeah, maybe I can start with a question. And thank you, Marco, for the presentation. It's really interesting, especially like coming from a total different background. And maybe my question is going to be perhaps like really basic for you, but I just wonder maybe what are perhaps maybe the biggest challenge that you see for why is it that we are not transitioning faster to biodegradable plastics and still keep relying on fossil fuels and so on?
Yeah. It's a very interesting question. Actually, there are different limitations to this transition. First limitation is the availability of the polymeric precursors, because we have a very large availability of fossil-based precursors to make polymers, but not such a large availability of bio-based precursors. And due to this reason, which is both a balance availability and request, the cost, and this is the second problem, is higher. So especially when we are talking about commodities, it's one magnitude higher cost if we think to have materials coming from bio-based precursor with respect to materials coming from fossil-based precursors. In some cases, this was forced by law. For example, since some years, we cannot use anymore polystyrene in single-use objects like forks, plates, or glasses. So those plastic objects now are produced with bio-based polymers, as I showed it to you. They are commercially available. So they are slightly more expensive than what we paid before, but this difference in price, it will make a big difference in the sustainability and the future of the environment. So those are the two main reasons. There is a third reason. Sometimes it's difficult to find sustainable alternatives that will match the same properties, especially mechanical properties or thermal properties of the materials coming from petroleum. And this is the direction in which the researchers are working a lot to try to find suitable precursor to match the expected properties, because the final properties, mechanical properties, resistance to mechanical stress, depends on the structure of the polymer. And the bio-based polymers, they have different structures from the bio-based, from the fossil-based one. And so to match it, the same properties, it's quite a challenge. I don't know if it's in the same in Sweden, but some years ago, at a certain point, they took out from the supermarket the shoppers. The shoppers which were produced in polyethylene and polypropylene and whatever, that they were very resistant. And they substituted those shoppers with the shoppers obtained by bio-based precursors. Well, if you go to shop now to the supermarket and you try to put some product inside of your shopper, it starts to broken very easily and very quickly. So the performance of the bio-based shoppers are not comparable with the performance of the shoppers obtained by fossil-based polymers. But we need a certain balance between performance and environmental sustainability.
Thank
Okay,
you.
thank you. Does that answer your question? Yeah, okay. We have another question. How are quantum dots for plastic degradation in terms of sustainability? Maybe you missed the word a bit, but yeah.
Can you, sorry, because I don't see the chat.
Yeah, it is.
Maybe I can see it if I do like that. The chat. So there was a
question in the chat, yeah.
A question in the chat. Okay, now I can see it. How are quantum dots for plastic degradation in terms of sustainability?
How good are they? How good are they? Yeah.
Quantum dots are another type of materials. Usually, if they are dispersed into polymeric materials, it's for some functional properties, and they will not add any sustainability to the plastics. Actually, they even worse the problem.
Okay.
Oh, okay. So, Professor, that was my question. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, okay. So, I was reading some articles related to quantum dots and also ways to degrade the plastics to, say, for example, to degrade it completely on the structure. So that was the way I was looking for degrading the plastic structures, and quantum dots is one of the easiest way, and may not be with a chemical process, but it would be ultimately by using a photogenic light and in an enclosed chamber kind of process is what I was reading. So what is your thoughts on?
Yeah. The fact is that quantum dots can induce the photo reaction process. And of course, plastics can be degraded by photoreactivity. Some types of plastics can be degraded by photoreactivity, but not the usual one. The idea of using quantum dots to accelerate the photodegradation, it's not so straightforward, especially if we think about an easy production of the object, because it will not be sustainable from an economical point of view, and it will not really increase the degradability of the polymer. So the main important issue is to find and to use biodegradable polymers from the very beginning.
All right.
We have another question.
This is
by
very
Andreas.
this is very interesting. I don't know who is making this question. AF doesn't mean much.
Hi, I'm Andreas.
Andreas,
Here. Yes,
nice to meet you. So this is a very. Do you have a material background?
I do.
Okay.
I'm a material scientist.
Yeah. Okay. So you know that polymers are divided in two main families: thermoplastics and thermosets. What you can really recycle is the thermoplastics because you can, for a certain number of time, melt it and remold it. So you can really reuse in and recycle. The thermosets, ones that you're eating and you produce a cross-linked materials, those are not recyclable anymore, because the only way that you can do it is to eat and break the bones, but then you completely degrade your polymers. You can use renewable resources to make thermosets, which already is important in reducing, for example, CO2 footprints and whatever. Nowadays, since I would say 6, 8 years, there is a strong interest in the science to defining a new class of thermosets materials, which are called vitrimers, which can be recycled even if they are thermosets, because they exploit, it's possible to exploit some reaction after the thermosets production, which allows to make these bones reversible. So you do not break the bones, you make the bones reversible. So in the certain conditions, you make the bones reversible, and so you can recover the thermosets, and so the thermosets can be recycled. So the thermosets in certain conditions, because of the reversibility of the bones, behave as a thermoplastics. But this is a new frontier. There is not yet any applications, but it's something that, in my opinion, will be in application in the future, because it's something very interesting, because thermosets were always a big problem because you cannot recycle thermosets. But if you design properly thermosets, you can introduce in the network structure those reversible linkage, and therefore you can also recycle thermosets.
Right. This is a major challenge, actually.
It
Just
is.
to get to that. And
It is.
these
There are a lot of
transverification bonds
Yeah.
is kind of complicated chemistry, and there are limitations of such. So it's
there is a lot of literature in this area, because there is a big interest to define the proper conditions in order to have recyclability of the thermosets.
right. But that's the concept that I'm a little bit familiar with. But it's more if there are other directions as well. That's I have not found, because this is a little bit in my domain where I work.
Okay.
But it's a big challenge.
Which is your domain?
I'm a researcher at ABB.
Okay. Okay. So you work a lot with epoxide, I guess.
And there's a lot of different thermosets around that should be replaced.
Right? Yes. Yeah. You have to take into consideration that, especially, for example, for electrical applications, you need certain, again, in this case, thermal properties, and there you have thermal resistance, electrical resistance, because you can have an electrical breakdown and for a broken of the materials because of an electrical limit of sustainability from the material. If you design a recyclable materials, this will keep the thermomechanical properties in a narrow window in terms of thermal properties and mechanical properties and whatsoever. So it can be proposed, but you need to select and to control that the recyclability is activated at much higher temperature with respect to the degradation of the product.
Right. And that's, as I understand, not really mature technology yet.
Not yet for an industrial application for the moment, even if there are a lot of research in literature in this direction, really a lot. If you are interested, you can contact me. I can send you even some papers and whatsoever, because it's the area of V-trimmers. This is called because they behave like glass in certain conditions. It's really something that it's of high interest in science.
Correct. Yeah. Thank you for your comments.
Welcome.
Very nice to hear.
Thank you. Is there any other question for Marco Sangermano? Anybody in the chat? Yeah, I could maybe ask what do you think is the best if we talk about bio-based precursors, so which ones give the best quality? As probably the plant oils, yeah?
Well, it depends on the
soybean.
application. It depends on the application, Victor, because the plant oils are very large available, easy to functionalize, and they can be good for certain applications, but their mechanical properties will not be so high because they have these aliphatic structures, and therefore the thermomechanical resistance will be quite flexible, basically. There are other molecules, especially coming from cellulose. I showed them isosorbide, vanillin, and so on, which they have aromatic string grains, which will confer to the precursor a certain rigidity, and therefore they will be more rigid and will sustain better the mechanical stress. So it very much depends. If you want to make a material which needs to be to sustain certain mechanical performance, I would select some monomers coming, for example, from cellulose. Or if I just want to make a coating or something else which doesn't have to be mechanical resistance, then oils are coming from plants are good alternatives.
Yeah, but then we have this problem that if it's food products, then it could
you can select plants which are not edible.
Okay, that's true.
Soybean is edible, but there are others like castor oil is not edible, so you can have a large amount of castor oil.
Okay. We would like to remind you that we have a form where you can give feedback to us and to tell how good our seminars were. So this is an invitation to the participants, to our expert too. So yeah, in the chat of the conference, you can open the link and it goes to Menti. In just a minute, you can answer this. That would be very great if you did so. Otherwise, are there any other questions? If not, it was a very nice discussion, I think. A very nice, interesting presentation and very good questions. Thank you to everyone who asked the questions and participated. We will have professionals here. Yeah.
Thank you very much. And I wish you to all of you a good day. And if you will have Eastern holidays, good Eastern holidays, which are coming soon.
Yes, happy Easter to everybody. And we will start closing this conference then. Yeah. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Marco. Nice to meet you.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
We need to stop the recording.
Bye.
Bye-bye.